Greetings everyone, my name is FlareBlitzed and welcome to Black Haven, a necromantic dating sim. This is a horror post-apocalyptic visual novel that's based around necromancy, you would probably seen by the title. In Black Haven, you're a former scholar and one of the last survivors of a plague that's destroyed the world you used to know. After nearing succumbing to the disease, your life is saved by a mysterious necromancer named No Eyes, who offers you a chance to escape death forever and relive the past. All he asks are the souls of your former classmates. That sounds really hectic, for goodness sakes! Like, seriously, our former clubmates. I think the closer we are to them, the more difficult it would be to actually get their souls. This is the demo of Black Haven, a necromantic dating sim. Some elements may be changed or revised for the final game, beware of that. So when we finish up the demo, then obviously from there on, this game is meant for an 18+ audience. Okay, so how in depth is this going to be, and is this going to be something that requires some censoring? It doesn't say in the tags that there's anything of the nudity or the NSFW nature, but it could just have a lot of gore in it, which I'm fine with. 3 days. It's been 3 days since you arrived at the library of Geyseron, and you can already feel your body dying 1 inch at a time. Your fingertips have become dull and black, and you can't seem to get enough air into your lungs. It's almost as if you're asthmatic. Across your skin, isolated black splotches have merged together, becoming a living tapestry of cancer. I've got no argument for that one. I was going to say it's a bit like cancer, but it was just so self-explanatory. As you feverishly rifle through the shelves, searching the ancient spines of books on diseases, your mind begins to slip in and out of consciousness. Minutes and hours pass in a blur until finally you collapse against the shelves and roll onto your back. You look up at the cavernous roof of the library, hung with whatever that word is. Thousands of tiny fireflies float between the spikes and rocks, casting dim light on the shelves below. This library used to be one of the ancient wonders of a subterranean land known as the Sunless Kingdoms, but now it is just a pile of mouldy paper. You've heard that they tried to seal the entrances to the underground against the sick when plague began. The plague. It had given artificers enough time to craft the first filter masks, but it wasn't enough. The plague still made its way down here. Now the only ones left alive are people like you, resistant to the disease but not immune. Big discrepancy between resistant and immune. Your mask has kept your body from breathing in more of the disease, but it can only help so much. Even worse than the cancerous plague spreading through your body, however, are the memories. The plagueful memories. There was a time when you were just beginning your tutelage as a scholar of immortality at the Itzon Academy. Everything was so bright, so promising. When you open your eyes again, you're sitting at a low table in a sunlit room, so that was a dream/nightmare. Whatever your interpretations are of that particular scenario. I've never had a nightmare or a dream in years. Scrolls hang from the walls, each one featuring illustrations from ancient manuscripts on immortality. A black pot of tea is sitting on the table, and across from you sits Rue. Hey there. You somehow look soulless, but very pretty at the same time. Just looking through your eyes, all I see is a transparent view of the abyss. She's dressed the way you remember her, down to the silver buttons on her collar, the uniform for instructors of the Itzon Academy. Rue shuffles some papers around, her gaze refusing to meet yours. Slowly the memory falls into place. This is the first time you met Rue after your entrance exam. This was the first day as an initiate at Itzon, the day you would meet your mentor and speak about your course of study. You had been so nervous to meet your new mentor. You had expected someone wiser, older, and confident. Rue was none of those things. Oh, come on, give her time. Give our poor Rue some time, okay? Or maybe not poor, but you know what I mean. Don't judge a book by its cover. Yuzu? Rue's voice jerks you out of your thoughts. I mean, how are you finding the academy? It's big. It's kind of confusing to find my way around, but I'm getting the hang of it. We're named players, so we get to name ourselves at some point. I see. Rue shifts in her seat. She shuffles around your documents, as if buying time before saying something else. You remember what you thought all those years ago. She's too young to be an instructor here, much less your mentor. Still, they told you she would be the one tutoring you for your first year. Thank you, Rue. We couldn't have a better teacher than you, or tutor. What subject are you most interested in studying? Right, so when you're saying interested, well, when you're not saying interested, but you're saying most interested, it's almost as if you think that none of the subjects above are, of course, at all interesting. You don't remember what you told her back then. What did you want to study? I would like myself some physical augmentation. The study of physical augmentation is the art of enhancing the mortal body. This can include the bones, muscles, organs, and senses. If you can upgrade your senses, then you can really well protect your other vitals. Because if your senses are high, then you'll be able to see what is coming along before the enemy is able to even fire upon you. Those who practice this art take pride in pushing the human body to its absolute limits. Try to remember the other areas of study. Sentience and regeneration. The study of sentience and regeneration is concerned with the art of creating and regenerating one's flesh, as well as staving off its decay. Those who practice this art are remarkably resilient and can endure lethal injuries and diseases. Try to remember the other areas I studied. Artificial vessels. The study of artificial vessels deals with the art of creating golems from wood, metal, or other materials and attaching one's souls to them. So basically alchemy. Those who practice this art treat their golem bodies like works of art and strive for an existence beyond the flesh. Or maybe it's not even alchemy, but alchemy applied to oneself. No, we're going to go with physical augmentation at first. I wonder how this will affect our end result. And in the full game, you remember learning about physical augmentation when you were a teenager, when a mage in training visited your old master for a demonstration. The man shed his robes revealing a Chastel's body covered in a dense mosaic of enchantments written in black ink. As you watched, he took up a stance on one side of the room while his partner opened a polished wooden box. From the box, the man's partner lifted a steel flintlock pistol. You remember being erupted as the mage's body tensed, his muscles coiling and uncoiling like snakes as his partner loaded the pistol. Before the shot, you realized the mage's eyes weren't human, they were slitted, like those of a hawk. The pistol fired, and the mage's hands were a blur. Before you knew what happened, he was laughing and holding up the grape-sized steel bullet, still steaming. That was the moment you knew you wanted to study the art of physical augmentation. You realize you've been lost in thought for a few seconds. More like several minutes now that Rue has been looking at you the whole time, with the same expression. Physical augmentation. Ah, well, we have an excellent curricula for that. You keep saying two different things, Rue. Still, we trust you. A servant arrives to pour both of you tea, and you left in silence as they fill your cups. You sip your tea slowly, remembering how you wanted to make it last back then. Anything was better than continuing this extremely awkward conversation. Give Rue chance. Let's give Rue some chance to be able to flesh out her character, okay? While you sit down your cup, you see Rue drop her eyes from you. She was clearly watching you sip your tea. Instead of speaking, she begins fiddling with a small piece of paper. You look out the window at the beautiful campus and reflect on your time there. Whatever time we have left of this necromantic scape. You were nervous when you first stepped foot in Itzon. You weren't from a wealthy or famous family, and this was supposed to be an elite academy. From the first time you met your classmates, you felt awkward and out of place. People looked at you differently, and you hoped you could live up to expectations, theirs or your own. But when you look back on your memories of Itzon, you remember the pleasant things most clearly. You hear a soft rippling sound and look over at Rue, who has carefully ripped her piece of paper along a straight line. She freezes when she sees you looking at her and begins to speak rapidly. Okay, so her expression has changed. Oh my gosh. One of the interesting things I discovered when studying here is the paper lotus problem. Have you heard of it? You know what, Rue? This is the first time I've ever heard of this in my entire life, so I'll let you take the boat of this one. No, what is it? The idea is that when you fold a paper lotus, you will never perfectly align the folds, and each flow will have a ripple effect on the next fold. In the end, one flow will shape the outcome of the entire lotus. If you know how, you can see, or at least recognize, a person by the flaws in their lotuses. Very interesting. Because those flaws reflect their individual soul as expressed through their physical form. She quickly folds the lotus, smoothing the creases and tying the paper as you watch. Finally, a pristine paper flower rests on the table. You inspect the flower from different angles, trying to spot some kind of asymmetry. It looks perfect, but it's not. If you magnified your vision, you'd see the tiny imperfections. The more you magnify it, the bigger those flaws would seem. You're looking into these small details a bit too much, Rue. Well, can anyone find a perfect lotus? That's the important question. For anyone to obtain perfection in any form, which does not exist by the way, even in something as small as a paper lotus, they would need to align their body, mind and soul with the principle of perfection. They all need to become one with each other. In that moment, they would become perfect, at least in a sense. Maybe you could attain that for a moment, but eventually you need to return to your normal, flawed state, like entropy. Slowly, old concepts rise from your memory: the principle of perfection, entropy, metaphysical symmetry. You haven't thought about all those in years, because when will these kind of things be applied, for goodness sakes? It's like algebra, like we learn it at school, but unless you're working in NASA or anywhere else which has physics, chemistry, wouldn't think biology would come into play, then what purpose does algebra have, for goodness sakes? At the time though, you don't know what Rue was talking about. Instead you just ask for a piece of paper. So yeah, can I have a piece of paper please, rather than talking about this very, very complicated stuff that you keep rattling on about? Can I have a piece of paper? Oh, sure. She hands you a piece, and you gaze at the designs dyed into it like cloth-like paper, the kind that gets a little stiff when you fold it. You start to fold it in half, but stop. You haven't learned how to fold a locust yet. Originally you tried something different. Yeah, because we're going to try a swan instead. You take a small sharp knife out of your pocket and start to cut small lines into the paper. As you cut, you keep talking. I think there can be beauty in our flaws. She frowns. There's nothing beautiful about flaws. By nature, if they were beautiful, they wouldn't be flaws. Rue, I can't agree with you there. Because in our individuality as humans, we have strong points and weak points. And I think that with those weak points, we enhance our strong points. Because we are seen as the person that we are through our strong points. Like, for example, if you're looking at a movie actor, you wouldn't judge them based upon the fact that they are a bad gardener if they don't do any gardening, for example. You look at them for their movie traits. So therefore, you wouldn't look at this scenario by its perfection points, if you even can consider that kind of thing, but you would look at it through their flaws, because in those flaws we can find our strong points. Like for me, for example, one of my weak points about doing Let's Plays is the ability to coherently form a sentence together without my verbal dyspraxia getting in the way. But I feel that the more I read words out loud, the more chances I have in the future of being able to form a sentence together without cocking it up. I don't think that's right. They told instructors about my old academy that a perfect teacher is authoritative and professional. Those type of teachers always treat you like a student. If you came here acting that way, I probably would have been intimidated. But instead, we're just sitting here talking like two normal people. And that makes me feel a lot more comfortable with you being my mentor. Oh, you look up and smile embarrassedly at Rue, who opens her mouth to speak. Instead, she breathes out a small sigh of relief and smiles. I'm glad to hear that. I've never taken on students before, and this is not my usual. I'm not usually comfortable with teaching new people. So I guess we're your first, or the first comfortable pupil. Rue watches you slice the cuts into the paper. And even then, when you put cuts into the paper, you start to diminish its ability to be able to fold into any other shape. Once you put something on that canvas, it no longer becomes an infinite possibility. Like even just like a particle of a red splodge on it. And splodges are usually quite big, so I don't know why I put the word splodge. A dot. After a minute, she speaks again. If you're trying to cut along the fold lines to circumvent the problem with inexact creases, it doesn't work. You smile and don't say anything, remembering how the pattern of cuts went. When you finish, you unfold the paper and reveal an intricate little snowflake. Rue's eyebrows rise and she holds out her hand. You give her the snowflake and watch her face light up with a smile. There's too many of those on the internet nowadays. I never thought of cutting it like this. It's the same sort of ripple effect. One little cut affects the whole design, right? She looks up at you and nods. Yes, this is exactly what I was talking about. Can I keep it? Sure. Rue looks down at the paper lotus and picks it up with her fingertips. You can have this. You take the lotus in your palm and cradle it, looking at it from all angles again. No matter how hard you look, you can't see the flaws in it. Exactly. You have to look with a microscope, or even look in the nanometers of it. It's so small, so delicate in your hand, it would only take a tiny amount of force to crush it, but that makes you marvel at it even more. When the stakes are high. When you look up from the lotus, you find Rue looking back at you. She hurriedly looks down, embarrassed. Aww. After speaking with Rue, you had your first session of martial arts. Wow. Which was required for initiates. I've not had a martial arts lesson in months. Think of a reason why. Think of something that's happened worldwide. And the only kind of person that would not be able to know its existence is the kind of person that never watches the news. You've never done much physical exercise as a scholar, or in general, so you were a bit nervous. Sitting on the hardwood floor in your new workout uniform, you notice one girl's gaze never wavers from the instructor's. Her back is straight as a post and her face is deadpan serious. Yes, I put pan in there. When the instructor calls her for a volunteer, the girl's arms shoot up, her jaw set and her eyes steely. The instructor points at her and motions for her to approach. The human body contains hidden depths and subtle dimensions of power. For example, when I ask Initiato here to attack me, he motions for the girl to advance, and she rushes at him with surprising ferocity. She throws a punch, but in the blink of an eye her feet leave the floor and her whole body is launched over the instructor's shoulder as he grabs her arm and throws her. She lands hard, but she manages to get her legs up under her and leap to her feet, apparently unfazed. The instructor nods to her, and the girl sits back down. When it comes to the time to pair up for the first exercise, you swallow hard when the instructor pairs you with that same girl. You look deadly serious. The first exercise is meant to loosen the wrists, and starts with both partners clasping each other's forearms, one partner with their palms up, the other with their palms down. Now, I know this kind of exercise. Loosen up your wrists. But it looks like her wrists are injured. At least her right one. No way, her left one is as well. I can see the bandages on there. You watch Lito tighten the bandages on her arms and lay out her hands palm up. You gingerly grip her arms, and her fingers wrap around yours, gentle but firm. You notice the skin above her bandages is covered in green, black, and blue splodges, deep tissue bruises. When you raise your eyes to her, she has that same dead serious look you saw before. Izagi, whoever has their hands on the bottom rotates their wrists. She lets go of your arm, moves her hand to the inside, then grips the top of your arm, forcing you to flip your arms over, and then you do the same. You mimic her movements, twisting your wrist, moving it to the inside of her arm, and wrapping your fingers around her arm. You watch her hands make the motion again, her fingers spreading out and closing like the wings of a bird. Don't look at your hands, look at me. Yeah, because you are the target. Although at times I would say you always have to look at the person's direction in which they are going to strike. Because sometimes it's not what they're going to do to you, but the direction in which they're doing it from. Because you have so many attacks that come from the same direction that if you try and specify to that particular type of attack, you could end up missing that attack while blocking yourself. So therefore, if you can predict the direction in which they're coming from, you can do one thing that can stop any kind of attack from that direction. Startled, you raise your eyes to hers again. She has deep blue eyes, and you can tell all of her focus is on you. When you get more experience, your hands will do this automatically. Muscle memory. It becomes an instinct. You won't hesitate, you just do it naturally. You gaze into her eyes, feeling your fingers moving against her skin. You can feel her palms getting sweaty, but Ito doesn't seem to care. How long have you been a student here? 2 years. She says the words gravely, as if she were telling you how many years she has left to live. Ironically enough, I've played a visual novel recently where somebody had 2 years to live. It's very saddening, and I thoroughly love that character too. Both her jokes and her story. Wow, so what's your focus of study? Physical argumentation. Somehow, that was ours as well. So looking through the main characters, there are 3 main characters, including a mysterious looking individual with one eye. Her eyes never leave yours, and it's starting to get to you. And it's starting to get to you. You've gone through your whole life trying to avert your gaze from people's eyes out of respect or discomfort, but here, no. You have to focus on your target. You can never ever leave your focus and gaze it away to something else. You always have to look at the opposition in front of you. Otherwise, a moment of hesitation, a moment of distraction, that is when you could meet your demise. It seems like Ito doesn't even care that she's staring at you. What's that like? She spends an uncomfortable amount of time in silence, her hands still rotating around your arms. It's strangely hypnotic. Have you ever treaded water? Yeah, I've treaded water. Here, they have you tread water with a heavy brick in your arms, so that you can only kick with your feet. It forces you just to keep your head above water. When you get good at that, they give you another brick. With 2 bricks, the only thought in your head is trying not to drown. Your hand spends most of the time below the water instead of above it. All you can do is break water, take a grip gulp of air, then go back down. That's what argumentation training is like. You give a nervous laugh, but Ida doesn't smile. It seems like she's inspecting your soul, 1 inch at a time. Let's not ask about her bruises. Do you have any tips? You never done any hard labor, no farming or rough work, right? Yeah, I guess not. How can you tell? You expect her to say, I saw it in your eyes, somehow intently she's been staring at you. You imagine she's been piecing together your entire life story. Your hands are soft, except your fingertips. Do you play an instrument? I did. Just a small violin when I was younger. That could be training itself for martial arts. You're always using your fingers. Anything and everything you do, even though it's not exercises, it's still a contribution towards martial arts when you eventually go back into it, because you're still using your muscles. Like going swimming, for example. That's still a very good thing. How many years? 3 years, I think. Ida keeps circling your wrists with her palms. You try to pay attention to the texture of her hands. And she's surprised. So surprised of that matter. The only things worth having need a lifelong commitment. That's my only advice. That's enough warming up. Time for the next exercise. Ida lets go of your wrists, your arms fall back to your sides, and you're left with that ghostly feeling of her palms and the sweat cooling of your skin. After the martial arts session, you headed to the bathroom chambers to wash off the sweat and change back to your scholar's uniform. Your next session was your first course in anatomy. As you walk into the room, the instructor hands you an apron, a pair of gloves, cloth gloves, mind you, and a porcelain mask to secure around your mouth. You put on all of them and stand against the wall with the other students, whose eyes are fixed on 12 tables sit in a row. Each one has the corpse of a deer on it. Yikes! The stench of rotting meat manages to penetrate your mask. Yee! Make you gag a little. Yeah. After a few minutes, the instructor addresses all of you. The human body is a wondrous and complicated thing, more complex than any clock and more elegant than any work of art. Each organ has its place in the body. Indeed it does. When he finished with his lecture, he begins pairing pupils up and assigning them to a table. You're paired with a freckled girl with red curly hair and long, pale fingers. She's pulled back her long hair in a loose ponytail, but yeah, because you can't do that in science labs, having wavy loose hair, but loose strands seem to keep getting in her way. Oh dearie me. Hey there, as the instructor begins going over the tools at your table and the procedure to remove the deer's organs, the girl picks up a small short knife. You watch in amazement as she makes one clean cut down the center of the corpse's stomach, just deep enough to slice through the hide. The deer's muscles are laid bare, and the girl begins making lines of short, precise cuts where the different muscle groups connect. You lean over to whisper to her, hoping the instructor doesn't notice. What are you doing? We're supposed to wait until he... That's boring, I already know the stuff. Here, hold this. She hands you the knife, stained with congealed blood and a yellowish fluid. Congealed, I mean. She then picks up a stack of wooden trays and spreads them across the open table. Can I just say that the characters are really well drawn, if that's the correct word, and also the background as well is of really high quality. I like visual novels when the visuals themselves are wonderful. It gives you something else to look at other than the story. I'm going to remove the heart. I want to see the little chambers and flips. Initiate Elsie, is there a problem with your specimen? No, we're good. It's a good deer. Oh dear. Then I appreciate it if you refrain from speaking while I'm speaking. Oh yeah, sorry. Sure, sorry. As the instructor goes on, you watch the girl fidget impatiently with the tools laid out in front of her. Finally, the lecture is over and you're free to start examining your deer. The red-haired girl immediately grabs a different knife and picks up where she left off. You look like you're a little sick. This your first course in anatomy here? Izel? Iz? How'd you pronounce her name? Yeah, I've never done anything like this before. The girl slides her hand between the organs and pulls out a pile of intestines. Which she hands to you, you immediately drop them on one of the trays. Totally green, huh? Thought so. Once you get over blood and stuff, it's easy. I've heard that once we're 15-year-old students, we get to start working on our own bodies. What? I've always wanted to be a little taller. So that means you think yourself as short. Is it messing with your own body kind of dangerous? And what's with the hourglass as well? It's almost as if there's a time mechanic. Or maybe that's just something that I'm overthinking. You watch the girl deftly separate the organs from one another and sever the arteries connected to the heart one at a time. I can see why this is an 18+ game. It goes into some really graphical details. Only if you don't know what you're doing. What was your name again? Oh right, sorry. She sets the heart on a tray and swings her head to get all of her hair behind her shoulder again, then reaches out with her gore-covered glove. You can call me Lizzie. What's your name? I'm Izo. Nice to meet you. I'm studying artificial vessels for the soul here. I guess you know a lot about surgery and stuff, huh? Yep. I spent a lot of time studying anatomy before I got here. I heard the students here were really serious, but it seems like most of them don't like to get their hands dirty. I like to get my hands dirty. Just not with paint. For some odd reason, I hate getting myself covered with paint. That's why I never really did art in secondary school, because just because of that. I hate paint. For some odd reason, when doing like science classes and experimentations within GCSE science, I actually did not mind blood, for goodness sakes. It's crazy. I don't mind blood on my hands, but I hate paint on my hands. She turns to you, her green eyes seeming to focus on you for the first time. What about you? Do you care about getting your hands dirty? I prefer to keep them clean. Aw, you're no fun. Why would you go to a school of Necromancy if you're afraid of blood and guts? I'm not afraid of it, I just would rather not stick my hands in chest cavities. It's messy, disgusting, and it smells bad. You know what, I think that's where we're going to wrap this up, folks. You really had to go through this subject, huh? Well, the same goes for... and everyone's obsessed with that. The comment takes you by complete surprise, leaving you standing there without a retort, without a response. Yeah, but aren't these two things completely different? Lizzie begins slicing open the deer heart, carefully cutting along the contours of the muscles. Soon the whole organ is laid out like a peeled orange. Come on, isn't this more interesting? More fun than just looking at a diagram in a dusty book? You get to actually touch stuff. Lizzie, I don't know how to pronounce your name still. You're not making the context of this subject any better because of that mentioning of that previous subject. But I agree with you, yeah. Doing this sort of stuff is more fun than just looking at, I don't know, trees. I guess I can understand that. Lizzie takes your gloved hand off the table and jams it against the deer's lungs. You pull it back and she laughs. Come on, book boy. Life is disgusting, so don't worry so much about it. What kind of girl are you again? After 10 minutes, Lizzie finishes emptying the chest cavity of the deer. Oh dear, you look around at the rest of the students and find that some of them have barely progressed beyond separating the muzzles from their knives. We have an expert partnered up here. I wish they would have given us something interesting, like a cow. Deer are so simple. Cows have like 4 stomachs and viscerals. You can't help but look at the gory tablets spread across your table and admire Lizzie's skills, not to mention exuberance. Despite some pools of blood and fluids, everything is laid out neatly on the trays, as if you were baking a morbid cake. A morbid cake for Halloween. Watching her do all of this with genuine excitement and nonchalance makes you feel like this wasn't such a big deal. Maybe all the dread and disgust was all in your head. Maybe it's the person we're hanging around with is just so calm about all this kind of stuff. It's almost as if she's already had experience with the dead. And now we're back within the library. When you open your eyes, the smell of blood and meat still lingers in your nostrils. Overhead, you can see the fireflies floating between the stalactites of the Library of Geyseron. You can feel the hard stone floor beneath your back. You hear something wet move, and feel something stinging your chest. The smell of blood is stronger. Ah, you're awake. Unfortunate timing for both of us. And you must be the one they call No Eyes. Something looms over you. A person. They're wearing a smooth, shiny metal helmet that covers their whole head. It looks like it has been molded to fit their skull, and it has no eyes. A complete set of human teeth has been built into the jaw of the helmet, giving it a terrifying grin. You raise your head from the ground and look down at your chest. Your jacket and shirt have been sliced down the middle, and you can see the skin on your chest has been peeled and pinned back with silver pins, like a butterfly on a board. A butterfly collection. Just some friendly advice here, try not to scream. I was in the process of removing your lungs, and screaming is going to be, well, it's not going to be good for you. What? You start trying to push yourself up on your elbows, but a figure pushes you gently back down. I thought I checked your pulse, but it looks like I was too hasty. In the haze of panic and horror, a thought occurs to you. If this man is operating your chest, he would have seen your heart pumping, wouldn't he? My heart, you should have seen when I was alive. Oh, this? The man picks up a small wooden box and lifts a blood-smeared heart out of it. Yet your head falls back down to the floor. This guy knew you were alive. He just didn't care. Just kill me already. Harvest my organs. Do what you want. I deserve it. Well, you're taking this better than I could have hoped. But I feel compelled to ask, why do you want to die? I don't want to talk about it. You don't want to know my past. Well, you've got about 2 minutes left before your body realizes it should be dead. I think that's long enough for a story. You look at his eyeless helmet blankly. The memories of your time at the academy filter through your head. Rue, Azigi, Ailes. There's no doubt in your mind that they're dead by now. Everyone you know is gone, killed by the plague, and it's all your fault? So we're going to learn later on as to why it's our fault. I was the one who started the plague. Me and my tutor Rue. Everyone's dying because of us. Really now? I feel like there's too much story that's already told to us here without the full game coming into play. Unless there are other darker mysteries there. Now, that's a story I'd like to hear. This is the end of the demo. If you enjoyed it, follow Blackhaven on Itch.io and follow us on Twitter at Triangle Lab for more updates on the full game. Yes, in the description of this video you will be able to find a link to the game itself, both the Itch.io page and the Twitter page. Okay, so let's see what we do when we visit the other options in the game. I wonder why it's called Player though and not Aizu. When you learned about the art of Necromancy as a teenager, you watched a master Necromancer rip her own arm off in a demonstration. Yikes! We chose the second option, by the way. Instead of grimacing in pain, the woman's face was serene, radiant. After a few seconds, the blood stopped dripping, and before your eyes, you saw the fibers of muscle start to grow like worms, interweaving and tightening until her boneless arm was whole again. New skin stitched itself across the flesh like a sweater, until not a trace of blood or gore was visible. Finally, the whole arm stiffened as the bones rapidly calcified and filled the cavity inside. After 2 entrancing minutes, the mage flexed her fingers and moved her arm in a wide, windmilling arc. It was the most awesome display of magic you'd ever seen. From that day, you decided you would learn the art of bodily regeneration. It's kind of like Deoxys from Pokemon. You realise you've been lost in thought for a few seconds about Rue's been looking at you the whole time. Regeneration? Well, excellent curricula for that. How does this differ the conversation? Nothing else at this point in time. Paper Lotus. Sure about that. What would a perfect person look like? What would a perfect person look like? I mean, would they look perfect? Not necessarily. In theory, a person who's obtained perfection in some aspect of their life would look the same as anyone else, but there would be signs. For example, it's very difficult for a swordsman to cleanly slice the stem of a flower without crushing the fibers, because doing so requires means being able to apply the perfect amount of pressure. Once I've learned to find the correct amount of pressure for something so minute, someone might notice that a person's touch is extremely soft, since their body and mind are so attuned to the pressure they exert. The greater the mastery, the more ways perfection manifests in the way a person appears. I see. If you were to reach true, absolute perfection, everything would be effortless. And the conversation deters back to the same dialogue as beforehand. Let's see. Okay, so it goes through the same flow regardless of what area you would go through. So, how'd you get all of those bruises? Sparring. I thought that might have been the case. You must do a lot of sparring. 4 sessions per... Yikes. Gosh, I only did twice a week, for goodness sakes. You pick up a hint of pride in the way she says it, as if that number is remarkably high. I'd hate to see your partner. They're over there, the one with a red stash. You turn your face away from Ito and spot a girl with a red stash practicing with another student using only her left arm. Her right arm is bandaged and splintered. I would have think sprained would be another word. She's much more experienced than me, but her technique is sloppy. Her bones will reset in a day or two. So she must have taken that regeneration class then. I haven't learned how to do that yet. Do the bruises hurt? Shouldn't you give them time to heal? She gives a sharp exhale through her nose and tightly grips your arms. You can feel her iron grip begin to squeeze your bones. She narrows her eyes and smiles. Pain is part of learning anything. It reminds you of what you still haven't mastered. That's enough warming up. Time for the next exercise. Okay, dokie. Now we have broken wrists. For goodness sakes. So this time around, we're going to select it. We don't care that we're going to get our hands dirty. So we go through this. It doesn't bother me. Lizzie smiles at you with bright white teeth. She lifts the hem of her school jacket, exposing her bare, freckled hip. A row of stitches runs across the skin just above her kidney. Me neither. She starts to slice open the dear heart, her knife following the contours of the muscles. You want to just put your hand right here. She guides your hand so it's gripping half of the heart. You hold it steady as she works, and soon the entire organ is laid out like a peeled orange. Okay, so Lizzie starts pointing at the different structures of the heart, the ventrices, the chambers, the channels of the blood. Deer hearts are almost identical to human hearts, but they're bigger. Isn't that crazy? Something with 4 legs, a bunch of fur. Same heart, but bigger. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. You know, pig hearts are even more similar to ours. You can even use them for transplants. Wow. She pats your apron just above your heart. After 10 minutes, Lizzie finishes emptying the chest cavity of the deer. Barely progressed. Okay, we've already seen through this bit of dialogue, and we've already seen this scenario with no eyes, and there's only one more thing left, and that is to see what would happen if we are going to go through the path of artificial vessels. Already looked through that. That is what I studied for Itzon. When you were a student, you heard that one of the newest forms of psychomancy decided to phase out of the flesh entirely. Instead, bone and blood were gradually replaced with metal, stone, or lacqueized wood. No one has ever achieved a wholly artificial body, but some have replaced everything but their organs, and organs could be replaced. The first time you saw a golem person, they was breathtaking. Their sleek form, their perfectly symmetrical design, their carefully crafted face. They didn't get cold or sick or hungry, and they moved like a dancer. Looking at your own body, you were almost sickened by how crude it seemed. In a few decades, your skin would dry out and your bones would weaken. You end up like your great-grandparents, trapped in a rotting corpse. A golem, however, that seemed designed for eternity. You realise you've been lost in for a few seconds, okay. So that, folks, I believe is where everything would come to a close for the demo of Blackhaven. I wonder when the dating part will come into it, but that was a really good insight towards this demo, and hopefully we will get more when the full game releases, which doesn't have a date yet. So yeah, folks, hopefully you enjoyed it as much as I did. Please feel free to put down in the comments below what you liked about this game, what you think could be improved within the game itself. It's kind of like we've only explored each character once, so there's the 3 main characters, so that's the karate girl, the tutor, and the girl that loves to experiment with different animal organs and stuff like that. And then there's of course the mysterious No Eyes, which could be an antagonist at some point depending on our path here. I mean, the logo of the game itself is like an Illuminati with an eye looking at you with a love heart. So you can tell with a love heart that this is definitely a dating sim in some kind. But I kind of like this scenario. You get to explore an individual with a dating sim in a different way rather than just going through a story and just working with them. But here we're kind of reflecting upon each other's circumstances. But thank you all so much for watching, folks. This has been the demo to Blackhaven. Like I said earlier, there will be a link down in the description below where you can download the game for yourselves. It is completely for free. The demo is anyways. The full game not even released yet. And we shall see each others in the next video. Have a wonderful day and take care of yourselves.